All right. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the George.Daniel podcast. I am your host, George.Daniel, and we have a special guest today. But before all that, I do want to give a shout out to Liquid Death. You can get that at www.liquiddeath.com or your local convenience store. Matt, how was, dude, it's been a while.
It's been a minute, dude.
Yeah.
A lot of canceling.
A lot of rescheduling, we'll say.
Yeah, no, it's been a busy week, though.
Yeah, I mean, I have family in town, and all that. Like, but it's been cool. I had my mom; she's alive. My sister was in town. That's double. But yeah, it was nice to see all the family together. But yeah, we have a special guest. We have Justin McGary.
Yo, what's up?
How are you, man?
Good. How are you?
Good. Thanks for coming out.
Thanks for having me. The studio's fucking sick.
Dude, thank you. I appreciate it. Shout out Matt, dude. 110% always Matt. But yeah, dude. Okay, we've been kind of chatting. This is our first time actually meeting face to face. I've seen the clips, and everything. I think you came up literally on Reels.
That's good. That's where I'm mainly putting in the work. So
right,
thank you.
And like it's been so sick. Like it's nice to like talk to someone who is also in the content game, I guess. And seeing the work that they do.
Yeah. I agree.
So that's just first and foremost, like you are real like inspiration. Like for
Thank
real.
you, brother.
Just kind of see everything then somewhat local, you're East Bay, we're down here in South Bay. But yeah, like you want to kind of give us like a little run through like who you are and what kind of brought you here?
Yeah, so I am Justin McGary. I was at a young age, my mom took me to a lot of different concerts and stuff. I've been to rough estimate 300 plus concerts outside of the EDM industry.
Right.
With my mom starting at even 3 years old, I went to my first concert. So grew up, my mom mainly was just a huge music lover. And I always thought it was a pipe dream that I would like, maybe I really enjoyed business even at a young age. And both my parents are entrepreneurs. So I got inspiration from that, but I was like, it was always a pipe dream to be in the music industry. So once I got to, college age and I was really trying to, soul searching and go through that point in your life where you're like, what do I really want to do for the rest of my life?
Right.
Music was just, it presented an opportunity to me. And, I'd been going to raves and I was like, you know what? It's not like pop. It's not like rap. It's not like this big industry. It's hard to get into those specific genres.
Exactly.
EDM was very much more welcoming. I loved the music. I loved the culture. I loved the environment. And, I had an idea. I was like, I love the business end. Why, I'm not going to be an artist, but I can go into management. So I got into, thinking about that. And I was like, you know what? I haven't seen, how come there's no EDM like FM radio station? I grew up with all this other music on the radio.
Right.
How come there's not, another radio station for EDM music? And that's kind of sparked the idea. And then the podcast came into play and, now we're here.
Dude, that's crazy. Okay. So
that's kind of a combination of a few things, but
right. I mean,
growing up around music mainly.
Just in general, it's like the one thing that I have noticed is the connection between music and family with a lot of our guests, right? And like how even if it was just your mom or like your parents or your cousins or your friends in the neighborhood, like all that kind of like plays a part.
I think it's because memories are so linked to music, and that's one of my favorite parts about music is like the memories that like I listen to. I grew up on country music. I listened to a Kenny Chesney song. It brings me back to being out wakeboarding with my family. Like this cool. Little memories that's connected to music is really what I think is my draw to it.
Right, dude, that's awesome. Yeah, most of my most of my music memories are either in the car driving somewhere or like we're
road
doing
trips.
road trips and stuff like that. And yeah, I resonate a lot with that. But with you, okay, so you said that you started going to a bunch of concerts since like 300 plus concerts outside of the EDM. But like, what was your first concert as a EDM?
Yeah, honestly, I don't even remember who I saw. I just got invited to like a Sacramento rave one day.
Okay. How old were you at this point?
I think I was 18, I think maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, I was actually 18. I just turned 18.
Did you always grow up in Sacramento?
Yes. Yeah. So, my dad lives in Lodi, but my mom Elk Grove. Yeah.
Bet. Yeah. And then did you go to school out there as well?
Yeah. High school all the way. Yeah.
Oh shit.
Yeah. And then I went to Chabot College for my associate's degree, and that's where I'm at now. So.
Okay. Dope.
Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah. Okay, so you went to your first rave at 18, 19.
Yep. So I'll tell you the story behind that. My one of my best friends, we're still close friends, but just our lives completely different directions.
completely
But
feel
we
it.
grew up
Yeah,
together,
yeah,
so
yeah.
we're still cool. We were at the gym one day, I think. I used to compete in bodybuilding, and it was one of my training days at the gym. Ran into him, and he was like, "Hey, I'm gonna go to." Or I already went to a rave. Next one you should come with me. And I was like, I'll think about it. There's always like that negative stigma. I grew up in a Christian family, so like raving was very opposite of the way I grew up.
Right.
But the funny thing is, I met him at church. He was a part of our worship group.
Okay.
And so he invited me to my first rave, and at first I was like, hesitant, and I talked to a couple other people that I trusted around the gym, and they're like, dude, raving's hella fun, you should go. So I was like, you know what? Send it. So it was like one random night. I was like, hey, Mom, I'm going to go spend the night at John's house. I didn't tell her I was going to a rave or anything.
Right.
I didn't tell her until probably 3 years into raving that I actually was a part of this.
Yeah.
And then after that, I went to my first festival with the same group of people because they just really liked who I was. And they're like, hey, you should come with us to this festival. So I was like, cool. 2 weeks later, went to Tahoe for base camp.
Oh, okay. Hell yeah.
And then that was my first festival. And after that, I fell in love with it. So
So you're more of like a bass.
initially, yeah,
Right?
actually,
'Cause even since
I've gotten older, and I primarily work in the bass music industry, and that's kind of what my roots and stuff in this scene. But as a fan, I actually am listening to less and less dubstep. I'm actually listening to more like drum and bass, progressive house, trance. I like all the different genres now.
Right.
That didn't really happen until I started the podcast, and I was like, hey, I don't want to just pigeonhole myself into one genre. I want to expand. So I had to start with me. Expand my musical, liking and within the EDM scene, and so now I like everything though.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, because I mean, with me, like I started going to festivals, but I didn't give a fuck what stage I was at.
Yeah.
I could be at techno, I could be at bass, I could
At
be
first
at
I
main
wasn't
stage,
like that. Now I definitely am.
But I was also like I'm like a ADHD, manic person, so it's just like I need the 25 minutes here, 15 minutes here, just to kind of like experience everything that is there, but yeah, like I primarily do house and everything, so it's like a different vibe, but I have this little wook inside of me that loves to I love my bass music, I love fucking drum and bass. I'm glad that it's having like a massive resurgence right now, which is cool.
There's a lot of bass artists that are starting to make drum and bass too, and it's kind of bringing it to the States because it's huge in the UK. But
it's always been right.
Yeah.
But it's just like there's even like what Georgia Smith is doing, right? Even with like she has 2 songs that are hugely like they're drum and bass, and it's just like that culmination of like pop culture taking something to like the masses is so important. But with you and with like how you kind of came into it, right? You're a business person, business-minded person, and which is really unique with the comparative to the other guests that I've had because they're very creative people. But you're also being very creative with this podcast.
Yeah.
So how did you find a nice little marriage?
Dude, I didn't know because I watched, my grandparents own their own business. My parents own their own business. I come from a family of entrepreneurs. Like I said, I was always looking at everything from a business angle until I started I used to make candy, or like even like back in like when I took art in like middle school, like I always like just had that intrinsic like wanting to create something that was like next level. Like I had that competitive edge. So I was like, when I do anything creative, or when I do anything, I want to be the best at it.
Right.
So I just honestly, for whatever reason, I liked the creative side still, and I didn't really get a chance to exercise that within myself until the podcast, and I'm so glad that it did because I love the creative side of it. Honestly, like I'm starting to love the creative side of it more than the actual business side of it as it continues to grow.
Right.
So, and I still love the business side, but
yeah. No, but that's awesome. I like it's crazy. I don't know. Like I have friends who are they. Like with their jobs, like whether that is like coding or engineering or whatever it is, to them that's their art,
right?
Yep. So it's just like from one perspective, it doesn't seem like they seem like robots, but it's just like no, they're painting, they're creating just as much as like
I don't know if you would classify this, but talking about my parents too, like my mom's a hairdresser, so that's a creative business.
Oh, for sure.
And then my dad's a farmer, and there's a lot of creativity within farming and pruning and raising crops. So even though it is a manual labor job, there's a lot of art to it as well.
For sure.
I think both my parents are somewhat creative people in their own right. So I think that might have been what added to it as well.
And also I think like everyone, like, I mean, the word creative is very just like pigeonholed now, where it's very just like, you need to be artsy fartsy. And it's like, no, creative is like ingenuity, a different mindset,
creating
a different way
something,
of looking. Just a different way of doing something and like finding new solutions to solve a problem. And that's creative in its own right. You know, like Elon Musk is creative as fuck, you know, like even if it's like just like his business strategies, what he's
just any business in general, taking something from zero to something is a creative process.
Right.
So
and,
anything in business really.
But yeah, that's awesome. And like, and then you mentioned that like you're now with the podcast that, how long have you been doing the podcast?
3 years almost. So
Holy shit.
December of this year will be 3 years.
Holy shit. We've been doing it for like 9 months.
You
know, like holy crap.
Dude, honestly, it goes by fast. It goes by super fast. The last 3 years, like it feels like I blinked and I'm 3 years later into the end of the game. So it goes by fast.
Dude, that's great. Oh, dude, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like excited for like our 1 year mark.
Yeah.
So, you know, and just be like, oh, we did it. You know, we did it. We didn't quit. You know, we're still here.
Wait till your 100th episode. That's a milestone.
Yeah, 100 episodes. It's still like you're our 30th episode.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just like it seems so out of reach.
It comes up
You
quick.
know what I mean? Because like in my head, I'm like 100. Okay, we need 60 more episodes. I'm like, I know maybe like a solid 35 cool people, you know. Like I'm like, where do we go from here? But like, yeah, it's been fun, especially because you get the opportunity to talk to people.
Yeah. An opportunity to learn from them too.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is probably to me the most the coolest part about this, right? Where I get to ask questions that I don't feel weird asking at the afters or at the club or like blah blah blah, because I can't be like, so like what was your like summer tour strategy, you know? And then they're gonna be like drink in their hand, like all this shit, and it's like, oh, okay, maybe not the best time, right? Yeah. So like this is the opportunity where I get to have those conversations, and maybe even for a lot of artists, they don't even really think about this because they have management, you know? So it's just like it's fun to like see the reaction and like what you're putting your energy into. And that's the fun conversation about this. But with yours, you're primarily interviewing like DJs, right?
Yeah, I mean, I have a good mix of people, I think. I do definitely lean into the artist side a lot because that's who I'm interested in talking with.
Right.
But I also, you know, as I said, I position myself with my show in the student position because not only is my audience learning, but I'm learning. And I like to have the business people on the content creators and stuff like that because it gives me an opportunity to learn because I'm not an artist. So usually when I interview the artist, it's mainly for the audience because there's a lot of, you know, young producers that follow us. As I think that's the majority of who follows us. But for myself and for anyone else who, you know, trying to broaden our audience, who maybe people listen to the show who have an interest in the business side, have an interest in the content creation side, I have those people on to help me and them learn from them.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like with me right now, like I've been having like this like, you know, dilemma of like content, right?
Yeah.
And like what it is to be a content creator.
Dude, same.
Right?
I did an interview with another person and they called me a content creator and I was like, I don't even know if I would title myself that. And I thought about it more like, yeah, okay, I am.
We're putting hours of like video, audio, all this shit online.
Yeah.
You know, for us like to not kind of already think of ourselves as these things, it's kind of dumb, but
imposter
also,
syndrome, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it is that imposter syndrome of like, oh dude, like what am I doing? Like, dude, I made a TikTok and like I'm like instead of just like posting clips, like I'm trying to like post like family shit and like me like going to the studio is gonna be the next one or whatever, you know? And it's just like it feels corny, you know.
It does at first. It takes a while.
It feels like kind of cringy, but also it's just like no, but like
that's how people connect with you.
It's
though.
for the story, right?
Yep.
It's for the greater good of everything.
Yep.
And like I can't like pressure some like having guests on and being like, hey, tell me your story, and then me not tell my story. Like that's contradictory. But like yeah, that's why like I'm looking at your like I like you know went down and I seen the progression as to like the quality and how you're doing everything. everything. And even like with your clips, like they exponentially gotten so much better.
At the start of the podcast, I would mainly just posting pictures of people, to be honest, like, or like quote cards, or like, I mean, the Instagram algorithm has changed a ton, and the reels weren't a thing 3 years ago, but
for sure.
Yeah, that's been a journey in itself. It's just
so you started
following
during
the
COVID,
trends,
right?
Yeah.
Like around COVID?
Yeah.
Damn, that's crazy. And you were in college at this point?
Yes. Yeah. I was doing college, and then dumb move because I didn't end up finishing, but I was in normal college classes, and then I was also studying to sell life insurance.
Oh shit.
And then I was also running the podcast. So I was working like, I mean, I put about the same amount of hours, just divided up differently with what I do now. But I was also doing that. So
yeah,
it's been 3 years of just grind mode.
Damn, that's crazy. Okay, so all right. So what was this decision like?
How did I decide to start the podcast?
One, to start the podcast, but also two, to drop out, right? Because that's a question that I try to ask Arjun, but he didn't drop out.
I didn't drop out either. I finished. I have my associate's degree.
Yeah. You mentioned that actually.
Yeah. And I'm actually, my plan, I had my car break down, and I was out of commission with my car for about a year. So that put me in a little bit of credit card debt. But once I get that paid off, my plan is to go to Icon Collective too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's my next step for school.
Oh,
so I'm not even done with school yet. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Damn. Okay. Yeah, you have a full ass plan.
Yeah.
I don't have anything. I'm like, who's the next guest?
I've been thinking about this since I was about 19. So, and I try and think into the future of like, okay, what are the steps, and what's the path of me actually achieving that? You know what I mean? So, and not everything goes as planned. Obviously, things happen, like your car breaks down. But still take that next step when you can.
Right. Or there's a pandemic or whatever.
Or that, yes.
Right? And then like, okay, so what you posting your first episode, right? Like what, like walk me through the steps, because I at least have someone else editing everything, dude, and I just had to just show up, and then I was like, dude, I don't remember what I said, but whatever, just fucking put it up. Like,
I didn't know shit when I started. I had a life coach who actually used to be a teacher and the industry advisor at Icon Collective. He's a life coach for a lot of different artists. He's good friends with Slander. He has his own podcast now, but his name is Nick Cheerwink. Shout out to him if he watches this. He was my life coach at the time, and I was working with him. And I told him the idea about what we were talking earlier, the FM radio station idea. And he was like, that's kind of a lot of money. Let's think, like, what about a podcast? And I wasn't really a podcast fan at that point. I like knew what they kind of were, but not really. And I was like, the way I thought about it, I was like, okay, I could, do my radio station, but just post it on the internet instead of posting it, through the airwaves or whatever, how that works. But yeah, so he challenged me. He was like, why don't we do that? And I was like, that's a good idea. And I was like, yeah, I actually want to take the steps to do this. And he was like, all right, have your first episode up in a month. 1 month. He gave me 1 month from idea of start a podcast to start. And it was like the whole month was, I didn't even know how to host it. I didn't know how to, create any advertising. I had no marketing plan. I had nothing. Yeah. I just posted it. I was like, hey guys, I'm doing this thing now. Exactly. Yeah. And then from there, just watching other people, adapting, trying things in my own way, figuring out, systems that work for me. And it's 3 years. I feel like I'm just now finally getting a grasp on like.
I feel it. Yeah. I mean, I still have no idea what I'm doing. I'm still just like, I'm like, what hashtag should I use? Like all this other stuff.
And even that, like hashtags don't do that much anymore either.
That's what, and that's what I'm noticing, where I'm like, all right,
it's all about the shares now. It's all about sharing.
Yeah. And like we just got on TikTok like a week and a half ago, so like
TikTok's a hard fucking platform for podcasts too.
That's why I'm like, oh, me on a roller coaster, me at fucking 4th of July, and just stupid shit like that, because those actually do better than or even just me DJing, and being like, hey, like just building that brand of like, this is who I am. But yeah, it's so fucking confusing to be like, oh, like I want to do this thing being just a podcast talking to someone, but and then like we don't have a fucking whole team. It's just us, right? Yeah. So we're just throwing shit at a wall, hoping that it sticks. Yeah. And like for you've been doing it for 3 years, so you kind of have like a little structure, right? You kind of have an idea as to like what you're doing.
I also went through a podcast like accelerator course that I paid like $5,000 for when I started too. So
Jesus Christ,
that taught me a lot, and like it was a lot of the foundational work of like how to not necessarily build the audience, but like you have to have like a North Star and something that you stand for and like I didn't have any grasp of that before that course, and afterwards now I'm like when we came in, I told you kind of what's it about, and support, giving an educational platform for the people who want to be in the industry. I didn't have any concept of that when I first started either.
Right.
Like it was all just that course really taught me and helped build the foundation of, what audience I even wanted to serve in the first place. So that's a huge thing.
I feel like, I still haven't built my business proposal type shit.
Yeah.
Like I know
your mission statement or
exactly. Like I know that this whole thing is just like, what my bio says is like you don't need to know everything.
I like that, by the way.
But that's a quote that I live by.
Yeah.
Like I love being kind of argumentative. I love asking questions. Like it's just fun because then I get to learn
and figuring out why people do certain things.
Yeah, and it's just like
how they do it,
and also like me and you may not be right, but I know your opinion on something, which just is a better conversation.
Some of my favorite podcasts are actually when people are not in a super like violent argumentative debate, but when they both mutually respect each other's opinions and they actually are able to have like that dialogue back.
Right.
Those are the coolest podcasts ever.
Like, I mean, it's just for I think I said this last time. Like, we don't have like speakers anymore, right? Like the presidential debates is a fucking joke. Like we don't have, we don't have anyone to like really, outside of these podcasts, even with like what Joe Rogan does, and like I know people have their opinions on him, but he's at least having a dialogue, right?
Pioneered this game, really.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's just like those are my favorite as well because it's I'm learning something. It's entertaining.
Like when Joe Rogan like calls people out there, he's like, I don't know if that's correct because I also know enough
like,
about
Jamie,
this.
pull it up.
Yeah.
And it's just like it's cool because like how often like if we wanted to, we could pull something up, mid conversation, and I was getting into an argument with like my boy at the bar, but like literally like for an hour we were just like having this conversation and we're like, well, we're not going to change each other's mind. Yeah. Let's just go get another fucking drink and just have a good time, But those are the conversations that I really like. And like, I don't know how to have small talk. Small talk to me is kind of weird, But with
it's a forced conversation, really.
For sure. Yeah. But speaking of forced conversations, you as a manager, though, kind of have to have those forced conversations, being of like, hey, I have this artist. These are his dates.
Dude, I had one literally today.
You know what I mean?
At the coffee shop. I handed the lady, she was asking me, she's like, oh, you having a lovely day today? And I was like, it's a work day, but yeah, it's a good one so far. And she's like, oh, what do you do? And asked me, I told her about the podcast and I had this today and told her that I managed artists. And she was like, oh, the owner of our shop, actually, we just got a venue and we're looking for like dubstep artists to throw. So now I just like, that was an awkward kind of conversation, but it got the job done.
Right. I mean, I feel like it's a little different when it's like something like a professional setting versus like, you're standing in line, trying to get into a club and you're like, so like, yeah, dude, it's kind of cold. Am I right? It's like, oh yeah. Like who do you know here?
Dude, have you ever had the people that like after they, or you meet someone in line and like, they like you don't really vibe with them. You're just kind of trying to get through being in line with them. And then afterwards they're like trying to be your best friend. It's like, bro,
inside
we didn't have the chemistry that you thought we'd had. So please leave me alone.
And it's one of those things where like especially being, I mean, a little bit less maybe in the dubstep scene, because like you can kind of be a dick a little bit, right? In the house scene, you have to be like, oh my god, I love you, like this is so much fun, and it's like
sunshine and rainbows.
And it's like, dude, like I don't know, it's weird being in like having friends in different communities within this massive umbrella of EDM, and just seeing like what the Brazilians are like, and they're like side trance, and then seeing with like the dubstep, like what crowd is, and it's just like I don't really like.
I think the Wook stuff is really only in the States, I think.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I also don't travel out, for like for shows or anything. But like, it's just like it's its unique own thing, which is so fun. But so like with you now that you're trying to like you've expanded your taste in music and everything within this, like, do you see yourself managing different genre of
Dude, I would
artists?
love to. Yeah, if I got the opportunity, for sure. Yeah, it's just hard because like the markets are very different. So if you get your connections in like one kind of niche, it's kind of like building all these relationships with dubstep type promoters. They're not necessarily going to be the type of promoters that are going to be throwing like the house shows. So I would
For
have
sure.
to get like a whole new network almost.
For sure.
Yeah.
Oh, and this is also maybe
That's
like a
kinda
dumb,
hard,
this is
but
like also
I
like
would be
a,
interested.
like a dumb question, I guess. But like, what's the difference between an agent and a manager?
Agents like primarily bookings, and then managers like there's a few different managers, like tour managers, like you actually go on tour and like help with like all like the text type stuff just
Right.
to make sure, you know, what's on their technical writer is actually correct, what's on their, you know, other writer, normal writer,
Right.
hospitality writer that they call it, is correct. Like just all those, like making sure each night goes as best that they possibly can.
Right.
And then there's a day-to-day manager, which is like, okay, but taking care of like your podcast bookings, taking care of like, okay, we got to post this. Okay, we got to release this song. Like it's kind of like coming up with the general overall plan of that business, of the business side of the project.
Right. Right.
So there, yeah, the agent is mainly like taking care of bookings.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm primarily listening to like comedy podcasts.
Yeah, so do I actually. Yeah.
So like those are the things that I'm really like. That's I see comedy and the music industry very, you know, they're
very similar.
They're very similar. So it's more fun to listen to them.
A lot of those guys too. Who do you listen?
Everyone.
Do you listen to Two Bears? Do you listen to Two
Two
Bears? Okay,
Bears,
so
yeah.
Bert Kreischer and what's
Tom
his name?
Segura.
Tom Segura. I'm pretty sure they're both on the same agency, but they're managed by UTA, which UTA manages The Rock, manages you know, all these different huge name celebrities. Also, they have an EDM division. So Jake Bernstein, I think his name is, is like one of the heads of the EDM. He works for UTA, or he actually just switched to Wasserman, actually, which is a different agency. But UTA is, you know, has the EDM section, has movie stars, has all different things. So that's like within those different agencies, there's a lot of times that the big agencies have different fingers.
Well, just like any, like, I mean, if you sign a fucking Def Jam, there's an R&B, there's a hip hop.
Yeah.
There's different departments.
And record labels are kind of work that similar way too.
Exactly. But they're mostly like distribution, right?
Yep.
And all that. And, but yeah, like, I feel like, I mean, at least with us and our podcast, we've never really had or been able to have these conversations. Because the only people who would know about these are the artists, and they don't really even know their own numbers for the most part. Like I like try
artists
to ask,
should.
yeah, I know. Like I'm like, all right, well, like if you sell a song at, you know, at X amount, like you're splitting that 10% with your blah,
agent,
blah, blah.
marketer, all that
and
stuff.
then even then Beatport
Publishers,
taking, you know,
and,
you know. So I'm like, all right,
Or
so you're left with,
if you're open, or if you're distributing on like Spotify and stuff, you don't have like a record label that you're releasing on. A lot of people use like a platform called DistroKid, which is like kind of like, what do you guys use for platform hosting for you guys for the podcast?
like right now we just did the Spotify.
You're just uploading directly to Spotify?
Directly, and then we're using TuneCore.
Okay, so a TuneCore basically
Right.
DistroKid is a similar thing. Yeah.
So yeah, that's what we're using is TuneCore, and then like I'm gonna like connect it all to like Apple Music and blah 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 and all this other stuff. But yeah, I'm just like, I mean, I mean, also this is such a small, narrow-minded way of thinking. No one I know listens to like Apple Podcasts, you know.
You'd be surprised.
It's also dumb not to put it up
for SEO purposes too.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm like learning. I'm learning as like everything, like as it goes. But yeah, we don't know anyone else doing this, you know, and the people who are doing it, they're on Twitch. They're not actually uploading it.
Dude, Twitch
anywhere.
is a whole nother animal. Holy
It's
shit.
insane, which is like
do
something
you
I
know
would.
who Aiden Ross is?
Yeah.
That guy grinds freaking Twitch. Holy shit. Like 8 hours per day.
Dude, it's insane.
It's wild.
It's something that like I can never see myself really doing unless like we do turn this into a production team. You know, we're like, okay, we'll funnel half our team over here where there would be streamers, and then there would be like content creators.
And then you have your whole, especially if you want to hire on more talent, like, you know, Logan Paul did with Impulsive, or like there's also that angle too, where like, you know, you have your talent division.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's so many different avenues that you can kind of like take this with, right? It's like with being an artist, you're an artist and you start your own label, and then from there you can be the head of it, but there's kind of like a ceiling, you know, to a certain degree. But with this, you can like fucking do whatever the fuck you want. If you just want to be a podcaster, you can just be a podcaster and then sell your shit to, you know, another
or just make money off sponsorships and all that side of things.
Yeah, you know, and you can just do that. Or if you wanted to, you can fucking really be like a content creator and do all this other stuff. And yeah, it's just like it's so much fun being like having that avenue to be like, all right, well, today I don't feel like this, but you know what I mean, and just do that. But with yours, like or I guess like what you're trying to do like long term, right?
Yeah.
Like where do you want to be in like 5 years? Like where would you like this whole thing to
5
be?
years. In 5 years,
Because you've already done it for 3, so
yeah.
that's
So
like,
by
you
8,
know?
hopefully, I have a good established audience by that
Well,
point.
you already have. I mean,
Yeah.
you already have like way more than like honestly like triple the amount that we have.
I saw. I'm not going to name any names, but there's some other. I guess I would fall under the category of publication, but some other publications that started around the same time as me are like way bigger than me now, and like that's been kind of hard to see recently. But got to keep up the grind. So
Yeah.
and I do it for more than just that. Like I want to serve the right people, and
sure.
I want to reach the right audience, and whoever that resonates with, whether it's big or small, I'm here to serve. So
Yeah,
that's what is important at the end of the day.
Well, I mean, I'm talking shit about myself.
Yeah.
The cool thing about you is that it's very community oriented, being the whole industry itself. Me, we fucking do solo podcasts. I'm fucking out here talking about aliens and bullshit, and just like talking about my life and shit. So it's a little bit different.
In aliens, so.
Yeah. So it's just like it's one of those where like like there's no centralized topic.
Yeah.
And also like week to week, like what's fun to me is like sometimes the
variety of
audience,
guests.
and sometimes there is no guest, but sometimes those are like our better podcasts.
Yeah.
Numbers.
People want to get to know you guys too,
And
that's
that's what I've
something.
noticed.
That's something that I learned way too late.
Yeah.
Like I'm just now starting to do content with like just me and like my personality and stuff. So
Because I mean, I don't like our news anchors because I don't know them.
Yeah, yeah.
But now, if you go on TikTok, you'll see news anchors on live while also on live TV, and you're like, "What are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, you're literally on channel
eyeballs,
6,
baby.
Yeah, you're on channel 6, but you're also on TikTok. Like that's so weird. But also, like, yeah, that's gonna get you the most, eyeballs and everything. But those are the things where I'm like, okay, like we need to start adapting and start thinking about all like where this is going.
Adaption's the biggest thing because it's ever changing, like every day.
Yeah. And especially with like what you were mentioning with like how you edit it, like how you're starting to edit your clips and everything.
Yeah.
You're using AI and you're using all these other things.
AI has been a lifesaver, bro.
I'm still just screen grabbing everything off of YouTube and fucking hoping that it fits and just doing shit like that. Like I'm not an editor,
Yeah.
But I see the vision.
Yeah.
Which is what I feel like with you, like you kind of like maybe for the first like year-ish you were still trying to just get a grasp of it, but now you kind of got the ball
You have a
rolling.
system. Yeah.
And then so like I don't know, I like the fact, or like I like for us knowing that like, okay, like we just need to keep doing it,
going,
and just gotta doing all this other shit. But like as far as like with you as a manager, right?
Yep.
Like with your artists, like how do you managing both? Like you have 2 artists, right?
Yeah. So going back to you mentioning AI, that's been a huge lifesaver, dude. Like literally cut off almost a day's worth of work for me.
Damn.
Yeah. Like I can get everything done in minus the recordings, like just like the clip making and the YouTube video and all the editing and stuff. I can get that fully done, both audio and video, in 2 days where it used to take me like 4. So it saved me a ton of time. So with that, I was looking at hiring people because I knew that I put another obligation of management on my plate. So I was like, okay, I need to offload this to someone, especially when I go back to school. When I go to Icon, I definitely am not going to, I need to do my schoolwork.
Right.
But I don't want to give up this podcast. And I know this is something that I want to do very, very long term, and combine my career, make it a part of my career. So I was like, somehow I need to offload this. So AI has been a huge lifesaver, like I said. What was your question? I'm sorry.
What, the artist?
Oh yeah, about the artist. How do I manage that? Is just that's how I cut the time off of my week, and I'm able to, I really only need to focus, 2 to 3 days on the 2 artists that I have. So,
right.
And they're still young in their career to where it's not like I'm not managing huge tours yet. It's like bookings here and there and kind of developing their foundational stuff for them. Yeah.
So, okay. So I guess you get a practice with yourself, right? Yeah. In the sense of like how you're going to market and how you're going to do this, and blah, blah, blah. Do you also kind of use like what you're learning with the podcast and everything with them? And with that, like, how do you manage, like, I guess it would be the conversation, the
Yeah.
relationship that you have with your artist, and being like, hey, this is what I think would work best for you. But have you ever gotten pushback from them and being like, I don't really want to, like, you know?
Yeah, I mean, we try, and I try and meet them in the middle. Like ultimately, like I work for them as the manager; they don't work for me, so it's ultimately their call at the end of the day. And I try and give them good guidance and stuff, and they trust me being the better business-minded person. But they, creatively, if it's something that they're not, they don't want for their brand or whatever, like they have the ultimate last say. So I just kind of go with what they say.
I'm
just there to help, really. So
like I don't know, like I really I would like to imagine that I would at some point start doing something like a management thing, because like being a DJ or whatever is like, it's fun, but it's also like,
unless you get really, 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 really into and you love producing, you're not gonna make it like big time.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to. What I'm trying to do right now is with this podcast, like just start throwing events again, and just being like,
which is a great way to make money, honestly.
Right.
If you can you can get the financials correct and kind of find a good venue and stuff, and everything kind of falls into place, like throwing shows makes good money. Yeah.
So like that's what like I'm trying to do is like once we start getting like bigger, like the bigger,
and using
artists,
this as a marketing platform too is a great idea.
Yeah. So I'm like trying to line everything up and everything, and hopefully with like the next guests that we have lined up for the month. Yeah. I think by like episode 40ish, or like not even 40ish, actually like 35, we'll have like a solid like lineup where I can be like, hey, it's a George.Daniel and friends. So like the people who were on the podcast, like I'll bring them out. I'll be able to pay them out and do all this stuff. But yeah, like that's what I envision, is like to bring this to life, because outside of doing a live podcast, like doing live podcasts like seems kind of weird.
Yeah.
Still like it's done, but like you need like games and like you need to like.
Do you watch Fresh and Fit ever?
They
do a good job. I don't really agree with their show that much. So I don't watch it that often, but like as far as like I've watched a couple episodes just to see how they do things, right? And it's cool watching, like they do a good job at everything is live streamed to YouTube, which turns into a normal episode at the end of it, but they film it live, and that's a cool that's a great show to kind of bounce ideas from. Yeah, like we've like kind of like thought about the idea of doing lives and like, but like would we put them on YouTube or would we put them on Twitch, or because like I don't know, I'd be saying some crazy shit sometimes, so I don't like, it's not gonna like which is censorship wise, I don't know which platform would be best, honestly.
Because I mean regardless, like I don't know, dude, I would also the kids can't even like, we have to say unalive now rather than anything, rather than the other words, you have to say unalive. Really? Yeah, you have to, or else you get flagged, you get demonetized, you get all this other shit. And I'm so glad that I was on TikTok, because that's where I learned it. And I was like, oh shit,
don't say that.
And I was like, all right, noted. Or
the R word, like no one can say that anymore, even in like normal conversation. Like
but like it's just like that's another thing where I'm like, I don't know if you're like a smart kid and you're like, like all this stuff. And I'm just like this, guy.
You're doing it, man.
No, for sure. But you're also like more like aware, and maybe like I don't give a fuck. Yeah. And that's the problem sometimes. Yeah. But like with like you,
there's all different kinds of creators though. I just feel like I'm being myself. And if you feel like you're being yourself, I think that's what ultimately the most important at the end of the day.
Yeah, and like that's been the one thing where it's just like I don't think a lot of people like within the industry didn't really know my personality. Yeah. Like they knew me, but they didn't like they was just it's me at the club, versus like, oh, we're having a conversation, like, oh, this is what you believe in, this is
a lot different,
and it's a lot sometimes. But how did you like being 3 years into it? Like, how do you manage that? Even if you do some of yours like through webcam,
almost all of them,
right? So like, so like, how do you like? Are you meeting some of these people for the first time?
Dude, it's a lot of cold reach out and just like becoming good friends with other managers within the scene, and then running off their artists. Like, I don't know, it's just like a combination of like cold reach out and then just building relationships online with people.
Yeah. Because I'm trying to. That's where I'm at right now. Where I'm like,
I spend way too much fucking time on social media, dude.
It's disgusting, dude. Yeah. Dude, like literally, I saw I wasn't going as hard like on social media like even like 3 months ago.
Yeah.
So like looking at like your phone tells you every Sunday, like, hey, you were on your phone.
I take every Sunday off. I don't even open a social media
that's probably
account on
super
Sunday.
healthy.
Yeah, and it really helps me throughout the week of like, if I can put it down on Sunday, I can put it down for a couple hours and focus on what I need to do. You know, it's like, it just helps exercise that self-control with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Damn.
I've even thought about taking a few more days off. Or like when I go, like I just went camping last week, like being able to like completely unplug. I'm like, I'm good. I don't need any of that right now. Like I can just be here with my family. Like I enjoy doing that. So getting off the grid or unplugging.
That's fucking sick. That's super healthy. And yeah, that's something. Yeah, I don't know. I need to like start really thinking about the grand scheme of everything.
Yeah. My biggest thing, you know how like when in the morning and I just started doing this the last couple of months, in the morning when you have that, you know, you're laying in bed and you're scrolling. Instead of doing that, have a book by your bed. Instead of picking up your phone, pick up the book instead. So you're still reading something, you're still waking up your brain, but it's a lot healthier to scroll on social media.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm trying to read more. You know, I actually just finished one of the books that my assistant manager gave me. And honestly,
what are you reading? What have you read?
It was Dark Side.
Okay.
It's like a sci-fi thriller thing.
Got it.
But
I'm more into like the self-improvement type books.
Oh, he's like, hey, you need these.
Yeah.
Like, just start reading.
These.
Yeah,
yeah.
like,
read something.
Yeah, and he's like, no, and he literally threw them at me, and I was like, all right, bet. Like,
I used to hate reading, and I think that's partially because of like the books you have to read in school are really old, they're really boring, and I just didn't connect with them. But then once I got older and I like started like down this like self-improvement journey, I was like, okay, there's actually some quality stuff that I can like learn, apply to my life, grow as a person. Like, so I get so much more from it than just like, okay, sit down and read for 10 minutes. Like,
no, yeah. I need I don't like, once again, I just started reading. Okay. Like, you know, like
you got to start somewhere.
Like the most I read since I dropped out of college was fucking subtitles, you know, like, and like, dude, and luckily most of the things I watch are in Spanish and I already know it, you know, so like, it doesn't really even matter. But yeah, no, it also helped me with like the questions that I ask, you know,
for sure. It helps me become
and like
a better
how to like really
communicator.
format certain questions and like really like have these things. I say like and still a lot, but
power of that guy.
Yeah, but we kind of just let them fly, you know. I don't really care. Like that's just how I talk. And yeah, it's just like it's cool that you're reading like self-help books and that's what you're into. I just they just threw a book at me, so I just was like, all right, fine,
gotta start somewhere, man.
Exactly.
Yep.
But like, if we were to start a book club, what would be your first? What would be the book that you would want the group to read?
I don't know how spiritual your audience is, and not saying based off Christianity or anything, just spiritual in general. But one of my favorite books that I read recently was, I don't know if you know who Jay Shetty is. He used to be a monk. You know him? Yeah. His book, the Think Like a Monk, was wonderful. It was about his stories and lessons from him becoming a monk, and he came back and now is basically like a mindset influencer. And he has his own podcast as well. But it really, like, I don't know, I used to always have issues with like, I always had a temper at a younger age, and I've really, tried to get rid of that. And that was one of the books, and like it talks about like meditation, and like I started implementing that, and there was just like there was a big shift inside of me when I read that book. So something probably like that's like transformative would be my suggestion. Yeah.
That's dope.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Cause I'm gonna be like, To Kill a Mockingbird.
I hated that book.
Dude. Yeah. Dude. Yeah. That was like probably,
it's like all this shit that they were trying to teach us. I was like reading between the lines. I'm like, I don't know. It's just a fucking story about this kid who shot a mockingbird. I don't care.
For real. But no, I need like I like those. I listen to comedy podcasts first off. So like,
dude,
it's like a lot of
like important to get away from everything.
For
like,
sure.
Yeah.
But it's still like a lot of these like comedians are still having like these like
deep
great
ass conversations,
you know, and like having people like discuss like the importance of breathing and the importance of like meditation, what you put in your body and all these things. And you're like really into like fitness because you're a bodybuilder essentially.
Used to be.
Yeah. But like that's, I think, do you ever find like what you learn with bodybuilding, and can you transfer that over to what you're
Absolutely.
doing now?
Yeah,
because I feel like it's a lot of discipline.
Yeah, discipline is the main thing, and then just like how to stay consistent. And honestly, like the biggest thing it taught me was like back then I was like in high school still, like I had very limited funds. I obviously as you get older you start to make more and more money, but back then it was like I was making like $150 a week being a bagger at like a grocery store, and like I would have to start saving money because each bodybuilding show was about $1,000 for all your entry fees and hotel costs and all that stuff. And so I would start like my prep season was 3 months. I would start 3 months ahead of time, putting little amounts away from each paycheck just so I could have $1,000 or so dollars saved up in that 3 months to pay for my show. Yeah. So it was a lot of like how to really put everything you have on the line for something. Damn. It was my biggest takeaway, I think.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And that's definitely still something that I practice today. Like no matter what happens, like, and I even have this tattoo that I got after my last relationship. Actually, the open theta signs means like open to change. Like no matter what changes, always follow your direction. So I have that in my Instagram bio. That's like something that I live by. Right. It's like no matter what happens around you, if you want something bad enough, you have to go and not stop. Like
that's cool. It's honestly, it's sick that you kind of have like your little like mantra, and then I have like mine. Yeah. You know, whereas it's like it's still like open mindedness.
I think that's the message each creator has. That like one
kind
message.
of have to, right? Yeah. And also like I mean, you brought it up earlier of you going to church and everything else. Like I did all that also. Like I did Young Life.
I was a part of Young Life.
Yeah. So I did all that, and like I was a counselor. I was a camper. I did everything.
Dude, summer camp was so much fun.
Dude, did you guys go to Woodleaf?
I went to Woodleaf, and then I also went to Hume.
Hume is in
by Yosemite.
Yosemite. Yeah. Cool, dude. That's fucking crazy. Dude, hell yeah, dude. Hell yeah. I always feel like such a weirdo talking about it because like my circle has they're all one Catholic, you know, or like
it's a Protestant or non-denominational things to do. Yeah.
So it was just like and it was like it's sick that you were a part of Young Life and you were part of the Sacramento branch. I'm assuming.
They came to I forget his name, Trevor or something. Used to come to my school like at least once a week and just like put up a table during lunch, and I used to hang out there. Right. And, like he really did a good job at like making a community out of it. Yeah. Actually spending time at each school.
Yeah. Same. Like we had like this guy named Grant Hadasaki, and he was like he was a perfect fit for the South Penn because he's like this Japanese guy with like his daughter just graduated college, so we all had these questions of like, all right, we're in high school, like what do we do, like blah 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 and all this other stuff. So it was like really cool to have that family unit, which I didn't really have because I mean we're products of divorce, you know.
They still had a family, but not a traditional.
Right. Like it's not all of us share the same name when we're in the same house, you know? And it was one of those things. But it was just cool to see like, okay, like this shit is possible. And like also like what religion brought also was like a lot of structure as well. And brought that sort of schedule, but also like a lot of it's on you. You know, it's your relationship, right?
You got to put in the work at the end of the day.
Right. And I'm not religious, but I'm like, I took all the spirituality with me. Spirituality,
like back to the book suggestion or whatever, like I still practice like meditation. I feel like is under this, like,
that's prayer.
It's prayer. Yeah. And it's still like under spirituality, even though it's not like Christian necessarily, like like Buddhist. I think it's more of a Buddhist type thing. But the spirituality in general and having that relationship with a spiritual side of yourself is super important.
It's the same as like I talked about this last time with all these crystal girls, right? They're all like manifest this, and it's like but that's prayer. It's like I hope this person gets better. I thank you for this day, blah blah blah, all this shit. And it's the same thing.
I don't give a shit how you practice it.
It's the same. We're all doing the same thing, you know. We're all just trying to be better people connected to something that's bigger than us, regardless of how what title you put to it.
Even like the ancient Indians and stuff had, similar, they had different gods and stuff, but still had the same practices and same ideas behind it.
Yeah, we're all just trying to fucking understand who we are. At the end of the day.
Where did we come from? Where did we go after we die? I don't know.
I don't know, but we're all just trying to figure out the answers, which we'll probably never know until, it's our time to learn. Yeah. And like, that's the cool thing about it. Like, and some people kind of like get uncomfortable once you bring up religion or whatever. I mean, at least we have the same like kind of experience with it. But yeah, like it's cool to see. I have hippie friends who like their parents we grew up in Santa Cruz and blah, 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 and all this other stuff. And like, I'm like, yeah, but you guys did the same thing that we did.
You know what's interesting is Rastafarian like religions. That religion is so, it's very similar. Again, it's the same ideas behind it, but it's like the way they practice it is so much different than anything else.
It's cool.
Like you're like required to smoke weed.
yeah. I mean, but we're also required to drink wine. True. So like, it's just like that's the way that I kind of view it. Is like we all have our whatever helps us tap in a little bit. And like even if it's
I definitely do feel
right?
I definitely do feel a bigger connection when I am. Smoked a little weed and like I get into the best. I meditate better. I actually get into deeper thought and deeper prayers when I am praying. Like I don't know. I think it like kind of aids in a sense.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, with me, like I wear this mushroom thing for a reason. Someone gave it to me, but also like it like spoke to me in a lot of ways. And yeah, like I was at some point at my lowest, like mid pandemic, lost my job, everything, and I was like, I'm just gonna microdose a little bit. For like 2 weeks and then just like really like be like, all right, what's the plan? What are you doing? And then that's when I started doing on Instagram. I did like a 10-minute interview with my friends, which I think was like the catapult to what this is.
Planted the seed of
exactly. And like that was like, oh, okay, like that's cool that like when I like started asking questions, answers started coming. Which is the whole manifest, the praying, the like give me answers type bullshit that everyone wants. Everyone wants these things.
Why are we here?
and like those, that's like and that's really cool. And that's I don't know. I'm also getting in a weird tangent about
You're good.
like, all this shit. But like with you, when like it seems like you're like you said, you're still meditating, you're still doing prayers, and like, so I'm assuming you're still practicing. It's to some degree,
I
right?
don't go to church every Sunday because I work 7 days a week, but I still every morning I pray. I still have a connection with that.
Right. So like we had Tracy, who's also is still practicing and doing all her stuff, and I like the same question I asked her, like, how do you kind of manage moving through this, industry, because they're, you got to make decisions at some point.
Yep. I mean, I still partake. Like I said, I smoke weed and like, I still partake. And, as I've gotten older, I've moved away from I went through a period of time, I think at the beginning that I wasn't very connected to my spiritual side. Like I grew up around it and I went through a period of time that I like didn't.
You gotta find yourself.
Yeah. So now that I am, I'm very much like, especially like with this whole journey of the podcast and stuff, like I wouldn't have the faith or the hope or like the courage to keep pushing if it wasn't for my relationship with that. So it's very strong now, and I think it will continue to be as long as I continue to do what I'm doing.
Right.
I think there's just decisions that you got to make, and over time, it's something that I gave up. I used to vape a bunch, and I quit. I quit. I think 3 years ago. I don't know, a couple years ago.
Yeah, will be a sponsor.
Yeah, right.
Just kidding.
Just kidding. But I quit that. I quit watching porn. I quit like a bunch of different things that
holy shit,
that I let my like body that natural people, everyone wants kind of that release or whatever. You have your vices, but I just got to a point where I was like, I want to be a better person. And it's always been linked to my religion.
That's so sick. And also I think it's a huge conversation that guys don't want to have a conversation about like sex addiction.
Dude,
right?
I'll tell fucking anyone because I'm proud of the fact that like I used to struggle with that a ton.
Dude,
I'm not ashamed of like
right now
telling people that.
For like podcast sake, I guess. Right now, I'm trying to go 1 week a month without like watching porn. Right? I'll still fucking bust a nut. Don't get me wrong, but like it's all like I need to use this.
Yep.
There's a computer in here. Use it.
And it does definitely take. How do I say this? It takes away like your I guess in life, like it definitely like it distracts you. You spend so much, at least for me, I used to spend so much time doing it that like I almost replaced that habit with the habit of like creating a business. Like I don't think I think I almost had to go through that transformation of getting rid of that so that I could become more successful, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, well, like dudes use it all the time, right? That post-nut clarity.
Yeah.
Clarity doesn't mean that you're like good. It just means that you're like
empty.
Yeah, and this is like, and like, it's taken like listening to podcasts and like listening to people like be like and talk about these certain topics. I'm like, oh shit, like maybe that's what I'm doing with myself. I go to therapy and I didn't even think about like mentioning these things. Like also like OnlyFans is a thing, and like it's also money being thrown and all this other shit and bullshit and like blah blah blah. But I'll support all of my people regardless. And yeah, like those are the, like, and also those are the conversations that I want to have with this podcast is have all content creators come through and me be like, all right, well, like you don't have a management group, but you probably have a service that you use in order to respond to all these messages. You're not responding. I know what you're doing. But it's also work. You still have to like you edit. You still have to do all these things and blah blah blah.
It is an art form. It's just not an art form that I necessarily want to partake in being addicted to.
No, I'm I don't have my credit card on OnlyFans anymore.
That actually luckily quit that right around the early phases of OnlyFans, so I never luckily got into that work.
Right. Yeah. It's also like me just being nosy, dude. Like, what you gotta know, dude. Like, what are you really doing? And yeah, it's just me being fucking just a degenerate at the end of the day. But honestly, I mean, I don't know how long we've gone, but we've gone for like an hour,
a little less than an hour.
Yeah. But like I have
plenty of time if you got more questions.
For sure. Like with you, right? Like with we're trying to start monetizing. We're trying to start finding ads and doing all this stuff. Have you like
honestly haven't. I've done some merch drops and stuff that have been okay. It's more just to get the name out, not really trying to make a ton of money off of it. I don't know. I saw you guys at the beginning of the show. Do you guys work with Liquid Death?
I know someone who works there.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like,
we have a relationship. You have that relationship. Yeah. I think it's really, eventually I think I want to get into like, creator type software, maybe for sponsorships or for like Ableton or DAW software, because my audience would enjoy that as well, or like any type of workflow type stuff for the business managers. Any of that type of stuff I'd definitely be interested in the future, but I think I still need to continue doing the foundational work of building the audience a little bit more, because it takes a large-ish audience to start making significant money. So I'm kind of I have the game plan of like the long-term play and like delayed gratification. Like I'm trying to perfect my craft first and build that audience, and then once that time comes, but I'm willing, and that's why I started so young too. So
I mean, you're 25, I'm 26,
and I'm already 3 years in, so I started when I was like 23ish.
Exactly. So like, I mean, to me, you're a vet, like straight up. Like I mean, it's the same when like 26-year-olds are starting to like try and do events and DJ, and I'm like, oh well, I started doing it when I was 21. This is what happened to me. Also I was younger and way dumber, and like all this other stuff. I said dumber. That's how dumb I am. But yeah, it's just like it's cool. It's cool that you have like these kind of like already like predictions as to like who you want to work with. Because with me, I would be like, I've already hit up like smoke shops and stuff like that, and like just been like, all right, give me your fucking code, and
I think that's something that I've learned by just watching other people too. Like I've a lot of the fitness people that I watch, I started watching when they only had like 2,000 followers, so I saw kind of how their life panned out, and they didn't really start making good money and with like real sponsorships until year 8, 9, 10 anyways. So it's just like, I'm willing to wait, and put in the work now, because once it happens, it's like the sponsorships are willing to pay you good money. So it's just like build a foundation and focus on just really honing your craft.
I'm like really happy that we have this Liquid Death thing, just because at the end of the day,
I love them too.
They're a family. Shout out to Lance. Shout out Lance. But yeah, they like, what's really cool is that anytime that I'm like, oh, I do this thing, and they're like, oh, like, cool, and I'm like, oh yeah, like blah blah blah, like we have like this silly little sponsor, and they're like, oh, who's your sponsor? And I'm like, oh, Liquid Death, and we're like, oh, I know Liquid Death.
No, Liquid Death sponsors like Steve-O's podcast. They sponsor some big big stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just like it's one
They
of
work
those
with
things.
they work with Insomniac, I think, too, or at least did.
Yeah. I think now it's like boxed water.
Yeah,
or some
yeah,
shit. But yeah, it's cool to see how like this little thing could create such a conversation piece.
Yeah.
Because we didn't have it until we got it episode 3 with Alexander, or like episode 4. And that was the first time that we did anything. We had the ad pop up, and then all this shit. And people were like, "Oh shit! What are you guys doing? What do you guys how, it's kind of like you're a fucking a 4-month in DJ, and all of a sudden you're playing at Halcyon or at 10:15 or some shit. And yeah, it's nepotism. That's the answer. So shout out Lance, I love you, man. But yeah, with what you're kind of doing, right? You're a fan of the music. You're not trying to be an artist. And but at the same time, you need to put your face out there.
Yep.
How comfortable were you when you you wanted to be a radio guy, essentially, but radio is just your voice.
I didn't really think about it in terms of that though. I probably would have ended up doing video content regardless.
Right.
Eventually, long term, you were asking long term, we got talking about something else, but long term, I want to, if it's still, I don't know, YouTube's an ever changing platform in itself, but if vlogging is still a relative thing, I would love to once I full-time manager and I have a solid team that are artists are playing big shows and stuff, eventually where I want to get to as a manager, I'd love to film and do vlogs of the behind the scenes stuff, because hardly anyone's doing that.
Right.
There's a couple artists that I know about that vlog festival days and stuff, but I want to show the behind the scene where how do you actually do this?
I mean, there's Chris D'Elia, right? He's not popular for sure, he has those things, but he does he does his vlogs, right? The same with me in high school. Mac Miller and Wiz Khalifa had their day-to-days, and that was my I was oh shit, all you have to do is just fucking have a camera out, and just start filming meetings, something, just making whatever. And also you're editing it. You're making the best parts, the highlights of every 30 seconds.
Yeah, I don't know if I would start. I don't know if I have any interest in editing the vlogs, but I'd be interested in being the talents, especially once I get to that point of, I think my life's going to be too hectic with the management side of things that I need to hire someone on to
for sure.
do the camera stuff and get a videographer and stuff. So
because
it's you got to find that person too.
Because at the end of the day, I the one thing that I don't want to see, right, is what we are seeing in crowds now, where everyone is just having their phone out. Backstage. Because if you're the DJ needs his own videographer, if the manager also needs his, if the videographer needs their own videographer, and I think then everyone's just fucking holding cameras, just
I think it would be mainly whoever, if someone's playing a set or whatever, it would be an edit, maybe if I were to do it right now, it'd be an edit of their set or something that would be a fun thing, and they would show all of us interacting before and after, and what does food look like, what time do they got to go to the airport, all that shit that I talk about frequently.
Everyone's
on my show.
crusty-eyed.
Actually show that stuff. Yeah,
all that stuff. No, that to me is my what I enjoy. What artists do, you can post pictures and do all that, and that's cool, and that's awesome. You're in a private jet, and all that shit. That's awesome. But also, I like to see today we're eating at this 5-star restaurant, and then next thing you know, the next day you're at Carl's Jr. And it's just this is the life. And you're sometimes on a tour bus.
And which is why I like following people. I don't know if you watch Subtronic stories. A lot of times he does a lot of the day in life type, almost a mini vlog on his Instagram stories, which I love watching. It's very interactive. I think that's really a big reason why he was able to grow such a giant freaking brand.
Right.
Yeah.
And same with with a different medium, but Bert Kreischer and what he does, he's constantly just I'm in the pool today, I'm and all this shit. He's I just took a shower.
Another beer.
No, you didn't. And all this shit. But it makes it way more personal. Right. Some artists are fortunate, and maybe it has to do with talent or whatever, being able to tell the story during their set, and then other people, you're just your artistry is the way that you share your life. And that's not to negate what you do at the end of the day, but it's just some people are better than that than others. Tom Segura and Bert Kreischer are a perfect example. They were on the same team, but one does 50 million shows around the world, and the other one like goes on a tour bus, and all this shit. And at the end of the day, it's how they are able to access their own.
And some people have that natural talent, like they do, luckily. But I want to also, in the music industry, not every artist is extroverted or maybe good behind camera. So I want to make a place with my team eventually to like where it's just easy for them. Just be yourself on camera. Like, just be able to just have it all set up for them. Me worry about that as the manager, but get them great exposure through it. Get them great marketing through it. All that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because at the end of it's weird. It's weird because like using other genres, I guess. Like even with like,
and it's hard to compare the EDM scene with like other stuff too, because it operates very differently sometimes.
It does. Yeah. It does. Yeah, it does. But also like when you're trying to just promote an artist, right? You still have to.
Oh, that's kind of the same, yeah.
Right. So like, I mean, unfortunately, it's a sad-ish topic, I guess. It's a sad topic. But like with like Juice WRLD, right? And like what happened to him and everything, like he was still documenting everything, and like watching the train wreck of like what happened and the unfortunate like situation, like it almost like brought his core even stronger.
Yeah.
And like what his story ended up being, and whether that is him being like, oh, just release it, or just having a team just release it. I think it was really important at the end of the day because it built the brand, and it like unfortunately made it true, right? Everything that he was saying is true. That's kind of what I am terrified of. I'm have my own shit, and I'm not afraid to talk about it. But at the end of the day, like I'm hoping that someone will listen to this and be like, oh, okay, like this is okay. Yes, all this other shit. And do you feel like, I mean, you're interviewing people for the most part on your podcast. And I do solo ones every once in a while. But do you, and you were talking about how you were like thinking about doing all these solo ones, but from there, like, where do you kind of see your story, or like what story do you want to tell, or what hope that people
just really continue to inspire people to like really truly chase after their dreams, no matter what, how crazy it is to them, whatever. Like I want to help people actually believe in themselves, instead of like I'm not going to bring up anyone's name, but I've been around friends, I've been around ex-relationships and stuff that like they just kind of settled in life. And like I'm glad that they're no longer in my life for those reasons, because like that definitely wouldn't align with who I am and what I want to do with my life. But I really just want to like lead by example and show people that like you can truly do whatever the fuck you want to do. Yeah. I'm noticing that like it's like life is a game, No, dude, 100%.
Like, dude, like tomorrow.
And for whatever reason, I'm so grateful that I have that like competitive thing inside of me too. Right. Like, actually, I think that's really what drives me to want to be better and want to be above average.
Yeah. and like, I hate the like negative connotation of like, I'm competitive. Yeah. Doesn't mean like I want to beat you.
No, there's room for everyone. It just means
I want to beat
I want to compete
best.
with myself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And like, that's the, like the words that we use, depending on what ears they fall on, mean something different. I spoke about the argument that I had with my buddy at the bar. I used the terms of alpha and beta.
Okay, yeah.
And for him, like that was such a triggering thing where I'm like, no, but I'm not, that's not, I'm like, okay, just ignore that one example. But he kept, like that was the one thing he heard. Everything else from there, he thought that
instantly, like, okay, I can't listen to the rest of
exactly, with the power, I guess, like, I mean, there is a sort of power of like what we do in the sense of like what is said and what is heard.
That's a huge thing that like I used to be terrible at that, but my mom has really ingrained that into me, and I'm so grateful for that. But she's like, it's not really like you could say something that like you're not really having that intention behind it, but it's like you said, it's like upon like the other person receiving it, it's whatever they think in their mind is the right thing that they're hearing, not necessarily what you meant by it. And so,
Yeah, that's the one thing. That's the one thing that Young Life actually really taught me.
Yeah.
Was like one night we were all supposed to get together with your bunk and everything, or the people that you came with, and then discuss like the worst day of your life, you know, and then me bringing up what I went through versus someone else's things. I had a really hard time, and I vocally said it. It was like, dude, like, pick something else.
Yeah.
I know there's something else, you know? And I'm like, dude, literally all of us are crying and you're just fucking, you know, whatever your thing was. But that was his thing.
Yeah.
And it was like, I made it selfish, being like, oh, like, how come you have it like easier, quote unquote.
Yeah.
But that was me doing what people might do to me, being like, oh, but that didn't happen to me. That's not my reality.
Right.
That's so like, why do you think that you can say these things out loud type shit? And that's the like kind of like fun thing about the podcast is just like,
yeah,
I had people already commenting like, you guys are fucking losers, you know, and like all this shit, which is, you know,
dude,
whatever.
Hate just means that something's working, honestly.
That's, you know, and all I did was just put the kissy face emoji, and I was like, dude, people are watching, right? And like, this is also the competitive side of me, being like, oh, okay, if in my crazy psychotic brain, I'm like, there's someone that I need to prove wrong, right? And that's just the competitive part, right? And like with that side of you being this competitive person, like how do you kind of like manage? Because you're managing so many different things.
Yep.
So
I've always done that though, man.
How do you manage not being as competitive? Because you need to like release the gas on one project in order to accelerate on the other.
Yeah.
So how do you manage that?
I think it's not necessarily. I think it's just dividing it, and like time management is the biggest thing. And dividing, for me, I compartmentalize them all into their own individual days, if you would.
Okay.
Yeah. So like it's like Mondays and Tuesdays are like my podcast days. Wednesdays bleed into Thursdays, like my management days, and then I DoorDash as well on the weekends and stuff. So, and then that's like the weekend type side gig. But yeah, I think it's just like having all the different tasks divided up into all the different days.
Right.
Yeah, is really how I take care of that.
Yeah, that's cool that you kind of fall in the order of operation type mentality.
Yeah, and
you know?
I run
like
my
structure.
whole freaking life off a calendar. So it's like,
oh, okay.
Yeah, as soon as I wake up, I have my wake up time. I have like, okay, you got to do this in the morning.
Right.
Got to check my emails, like even like everything to the hour almost. And like, I'm not perfect about the timing on everything, but like I have a structure for every single day.
Right. You're not like Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah.
You know, like I got 15 minutes to pray. I got
not like that.
Like 13 minutes to eat. Like all this shit.
And I definitely have my procrastination moments and stuff. But everything again, I put a deadline on everything too. So it's like, and in school, I used to be the worst procrastinator. So I've gotten much better about time management because I've had to. But yeah, calendar is one of the major keys to my success.
Yeah, because like I mean, right now with like we have a calendar for the podcast and everything, and like I put everything on there.
That's where it started for me.
Yeah.
Well, I started like back in college. I had like to-do lists, and then it slowly I was like, I should probably like have an appropriate time for this maybe. And then for the podcast, once I was like, okay, now I'm actually writing date and times for things. Then I just structured my whole life around that.
Right.
Yeah.
And then okay, I guess they're just kind of like like a lot of people who listen to this are like mostly like up and coming producers and blah blah blah. So like, how would, if you were an artist, right? How would you kind of structure your time? Being like, oh, I'm gonna set it out like 2 hours
as an artist.
Like
I would probably,
because you manage.
Yeah,
artists,
I know a
right?
lot of people. Yeah, but yeah.
Or like how
they kind of run their own like schedules, I guess you could say. But what I've seen a lot of people do is like have everything where people do different things for just depending on how kind of works for you too. Even running the podcast is kind of that way.
Yeah,
different things work for different people. But you know, set aside time maybe to do what's it called? Sound development, or you know, working on the different individual sound design sessions. So that's what I was looking for. Sound design sessions, songwriting. You even need time off too, like to go clear your head and step away from things, like scheduling that in too. I even try to schedule that in. It's really just up to the individual, I think, to how they want it and what works for them, of like as far as workflow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
since I'm not an artist, that's kind of a hard question for me to.
For sure. I mean, I the only reason why I ask is I mean, you've talked to way more artists than I have, and you also work alongside two artists.
Yeah.
You know, like the most that I get to do is
my guys also are just as busy as me too, because like they have their own jobs individually as well, like outside of the music stuff. So until we all go full time, it's different playing fields and different levels.
And then like when that does happen for you, like how do you think that's gonna like? I always like to think about this stuff is like when that check comes, right? Or when that opportunity comes, like how I'm going to act up, but I hope that it's not going to be, you know, like I hope that it's not going to be to the point of like
being the businessman I am. I'm taking as much money. I'm living way below my means, and I'm taking as much money and investing it as soon as I can.
Well, like my thing is like, yeah, for sure. Like I've been living in the same spots for 12 years. You know, like I don't think in like.
Until I have like a wife and family, I don't need to worry about that.
You know,
I can personally live with very little.
Yeah, exactly. You know, like, dude, I don't mind eating ramen noodle. I don't give a fuck if that means that like, hey Matt, we're going to Vegas tomorrow because like we got to film this thing, you know, or like whatever the fuck. If that happens and that opportunity comes, like I'm going to put everything into that.
For sure.
You know?
Yeah. And I think that's why I don't have a traditional job and why DoorDash works so well for me. Because I can work whenever the fuck I want. And if I don't need to work that week, I'm not going to. So as soon as I do have that check, it's like, okay, cool. I don't need to DoorDash anymore. Just stop doing it. Like there's no boss that I need to quit with. I run my own schedule in my own life now already. So that's kind of why I did that.
Like luckily,
and I make good enough money. So
no, luckily like I'm at like, you know, the latest that I'll get out is 6:30, you know, and then we'll come here and record at 7:30, you know.
The other reason too is because like a lot of the people that I have on the show also kind of run their own schedules, and a lot of people want to do during the week during like 2 o'clock.
That shit kills me.
Yeah, so that gives me the flexibility to do that as well.
Yeah, and yeah, that's the one thing with this, like I like the physical, like you are here, you know, like, I mean, eventually maybe we'll do like someone via Zoom or whatever the fuck. How do you actually do that?
I do it on Riverside.
On Riverside
FM.
Okay.
It records locally on both sides and then uploads both separate video and audio files to a cloud service that I have access to.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's way better quality because it actually records locally instead of screen capturing what's on the screen.
It's not just compressing everything immediately. Oh, that's fucking sick.
I mean, you gotta pay for it, but
right. Yeah. No, I mean, especially what you're doing. Like, I think the cool thing that you're doing is that you can reach out to anyone.
Yep.
At any given point and just be like.
That was a hard decision for me to make in the beginning too, because I was like, well, long term, I do want to scale this. I should probably set myself up in a way that like I can reach anyone. But that was a hard thing at first of like, should I just focus on local market first, like you guys are doing, which you guys are doing a great job with, or should I, you know, try and get people on from other places? And even from day one, like it's been remote, so it's been an easy thing to like, I guess, scale.
Yeah,
by doing it that way.
Yeah, I mean, luckily, like now that summer's here, you know, I have like people from LA coming up or Sacramento coming down or whatever, you know. So like it kind of like helps. I can reach out and be like, hey, I know you're coming next month. Do you want to come a day early? I'll even pay for your hotel room if that's what you need. In order for you to spend an hour and a half, 2 hours here, we'll have fun. I'll bring beers. I don't give a fuck what you need.
That's what I'm going to be trying to do. I'm going to try and probably do more in-person ones when I move down to LA for Icon, because I actually have access to their studios too. So it's like just set up some cameras and some mics, and I can just use their studios. It's like professionally soundproof and everything too.
Right. So that's going to fucking be crazy.
So that'll be different. Yeah.
And also like the cool thing, like with me personally, right? Like if I follow a vlogger or YouTuber, whatever the fuck, the level up is like fun for me as a viewer. You know?
The day one people, I've experienced that as well, to watch vloggers in the fitness space, especially like grow and, you know, go from like an apartment to like owning big, beautiful homes and like, you know, what they made their life into using this, you know, the platform. And it's very inspiring.
It's just like, so it's cool because you're like anyone who does content is like putting their life out there, right? Whether that is like showing you everything or just like a piece of you, regardless, like we're out here, you know, and it's up and online.
You got to be very vulnerable and like willing to wear your heart on your sleeve,
right? And I think people like kind of like people do gravitate to that, like that vulnerability.
That's what makes most people grow, honestly.
And
it's the relationship that they think they have with that person online.
Which is
because then when the people actually meet their fans, they're like, I don't know who the fuck you are, but you know me, you know my whole life.
Like, have you met someone who's known you from the podcast that you've never met before?
Yep.
That was the weirdest experience for me. Which is like, you're the podcaster. And I'm like, I'm Danny. Like, it's like, and I'm like,
when people call me like Underground Society, and I'm like, that's not my name. That's my company name. But okay.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I know what you mean. Or people like always just call me George, or whatever. And I'm like, okay.
I don't know if you've told that story or not, but what is the George.Daniel?
My real name is George.Daniel. So it's George.Daniel. So I was just like, let's just anglify it and just put George.Daniel.
Yeah.
Also like George Michael, George Lucas, like these like one like like it just sounds nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was just like, that's the way I decided it, and it was also very last minute because they needed it for a flyer, and I was like, I don't DJ, like you guys are just throwing me on just because we need someone. But yeah, and then from there it just kind of stuck. But yeah, that was kind of like the hard harder decisions is picking out a name. Is like who, because you're kind of like creating an alias, right? This is my cloak. When I'm George.Daniel, I'm a different person. When I'm Danny,
like my homies,
I'm a different person.
Yeah.
And it's not.
It was hard to. That was another thing that was hard to kind of wrap my head around, was like going out in public, like, and I battled a lot with like what people thought of me too, and like going out in public of like wearing this cloak or like not wanting to publicize. Like I wanted people to know about it, but it was hard for me to like just go out and tell someone about it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I was afraid of their judgment towards me for doing that, even though that rationally doesn't make any sense. But
no, I'm more okay with people finding it than me talking about it. It's just like, well, if you found,
but you got to get over that at a certain point.
Right. And like even just like at work or when we do go out to the clubs, like I'll show, like you always exchange Instagrams because phone numbers are weird nowadays. And no one ever really calls anyone. So
and you can call through Instagram now. So
exactly. So you just use Instagram, and then next thing you know, they're like, oh, like you have a podcast, and I was like, yeah, you can follow it if you want, but also,
or when people find out, for me, it's like, cause my show's more targeted. Like when people are like, oh, sorry, I don't listen to your show. It's like, it's okay. It's not really for you. Like you don't want to be in the industry. So it's totally fine.
right. And that's like it's been such a trip. Right. So like me go to my own gigs, and then people talk to me about my podcast rather than my set. And I was like, my set.
Do you know Lizzie Jane?
Yeah.
She's the same type of way. She's a really good artist, but she's also a successful podcaster too. So
so it's kind of like, even with like to bring it back to like just like comedians, right? They even have this kind of like, are you guys podcast fans? Are you guys comedy fans? Sometimes like podcast fans come to a comedy show and they're like, wait, but I thought you were different, like all this shit. So like it's weird because even earlier on, I like played the part. I was like, I'll be this, like this person and blah, blah, blah. But I would go home like fucking tired, spent, and like fucking hating myself because I was like, that's not you. Yeah. Because then now I have to be this person.
Way better to be yourself.
And like that was like early on where I was like, starting in the year, I was like, I'm going to give myself 6 months. 6 months to be like go on the benders, fucking go to every fucking after hours, I'll be in San Francisco and all this shit. And then next, it was just like, I actually hate myself.
I'm done.
Like 4 months in, just like, this was not cool. I was working 2 jobs, plus also like DJing and doing all this other stuff. Like, dude, like I needed to fucking drink a cup of decaf and just like, drink some water, like relax. But like, that's why I'm really appreciative of this like podcast. Cause like, if I invite you out, it's cause like I, with the 20 minutes that we did spend total at the club.
Yeah.
I find you intriguing enough to like want to actually talk to you.
Yeah.
I'm not just going to talk to anyone. You can have 1 million followers. I don't care. If you're not interesting to me, I can't do this for you.
Or if it can't, or if you can't find common ground or whatever.
Right. Well, I've also haven't even really attempted.
Have you had like difficult guests yet? Like where it's like difficult for them to talk?
Yeah, but also like
I got a lot of that early on. It was hard.
It's hard. Well, I feel like at least with yours, right? Your channel has obviously grown, and like people who come on can at least have like 2 years of like, 3 years of like,
back
this
catalog.
is what it's about and blah blah blah. But with me, it's kind of like I've had like fashion designers, I've had DJs, it's been solo, it's been my friends, so it's kind of hard to grasp because every guest I'm kind of like a different person a little bit, because it's like with Arjun, who's my best friend, like we're just fucking shooting shit, talking about like all this fucking random stuff, and telling like family stories and stuff. But then I'll have like someone like them too, and I'll be like, so you guys, what are you guys doing? Because like you guys are like blowing up, you guys have this label, blah blah blah. And yeah, it's just been it's been a trip just to like even see myself.
Yeah.
So like with you, like how do you kind of like, do you like, have you like had the opportunity to kind of like reflect as to the person that you were in the beginning versus who you are now?
Yeah, that's something actually with meditation and stuff I actually have a lot of time to like think about, and just like, you gotta be grateful for where you are. It's like there's a lot of times where like it's like you do get discouraged. There are times when you want to quit, and like I don't know, for me it's like reflecting is really what, and looking back at the person that I've become, and and I've grown up a lot since then. Like that's 3 years of, being in your mid 20s, you do change. So your 20s, you change a lot as a person. So just maturing and becoming a better communicator, and, just the progress that I have made, and just, I'm proud of all of it. And it is cool to look back and
well, it's also like you have like video proof
of
like the shit.
And I think that's why I want to do the vlog thing too, is not just for like the benefit that the audience receives from it, but also like, so that I can look back at my career when I'm done with it and be like, holy shit, like we did it, bro. Like, look at all these memories that we have on film.
Like I didn't want to use this as like a diary, but it's turning out to be that thing where I'm like I can look back and be like, oh dude, that month, like I did have 4 gigs. Or like, we did do all these things, or like blah, 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 or like my family did come and we did have these stories and all this other stuff. But it's also cool that to see kind of even just like the way that I like, I'm not as afraid of my own self. Yeah. Since I've started this.
At first I was very like, I hated hearing my own voice back. I hated just like it's a constant like you just staring at the mirror, and it's just like, but it's not just a reflection, it's an audio, it's like, and then all of a sudden there's a crowd behind you looking at the same thing, and you're just like, fuck, and that's like, that's something that I actually like talk to my therapist a lot about, where it's just like, it's this whole like, it's not just my eyeballs, that I'm afraid of, or like that I think about. It's not really afraid. It's more so like what, like my mom listens to it, and she knows all of it, you know, like it's, and there's a lot of stuff that got brought up for me in the earlier times when I was, beginning to tell my story through it and stuff like that. Was like, I had never told my parents, and they listened to it, and I'm like, hey, before you listen to today's episode, let me tell you this that I have not told you yet, but this happened. Like, before you hear it from just like the program, let me personally tell you.
Like that's it's like I don't know how to explain. I don't even know what like the real like term for it would be, but like not being able to have a platform, but also be able to edit yourself a little bit, is nice. Which I guess we do at any given time. But also like the more comfortable I am in front of a camera is the more comfortable I've been with people. Yeah. And earlier on before this, like I had real social anxiety. Like I used to be very, like,
I still get that sometimes.
Yeah. Like I was an extrovert who turned into an introvert.
I feel like I've become definitely, and I was talking to, actually I interviewed, do you know who Uber is?
No.
Uber, he's been in the game forever, the dubstep scene. I interviewed him today, and we were talking about like, damn, what were we just talking about? Jesus, I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
Pretty much, what were we talking about? Just like
power of editing.
Yeah, the power of editing, and the power of like, the conversation and all this other shit, and then being able to edit yourself long term.
Oh yes. Damn, I don't know what I talked. I'm so sorry.
No, you're
lost my train of thought.
But no, yeah, like straight up, like it's been cool to like reflect, and then also because I do go to therapy and all this other stuff, like it's fun to check in, you know, with someone who doesn't watch the podcast, who doesn't watch all this stuff, and like, so what did you talk about with your guests today, you know, or like blah blah blah, and to be like, oh well, like I brought this up, and they're like, oh, you brought it up with them, but not with me, you know, and it's like, yeah,
I've heard a lot of podcast hosts say that,
yeah,
like even big shows, they're like I think I watch Impulsive a lot, and I think Logan said one time that he was like, you know, that I say more things that are on my mind, and like I'm more myself
it's in the
podcast than I am anywhere.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I view it anyways, like as a true art form.
Yeah.
You know.
For sure.
In the sense of like, it
takes a lot of little skills to be a good host and to be a good, you know, to put on a good show. It takes a lot of like culmination of a lot of different skills packaged into this one like podcast host, owner, founder thing.
Exactly. Like the one thing, like I was watching the Bob Ross documentary, and his paintings weren't Michelangelo or whatever. They were really good paintings, but it's the fact that he's able to connect with thousands of people on PBS, you know, and like do all that, and like
and
that
now Netflix, or if it's still there.
Yeah, exactly. But on Netflix and like it's the fact that he was able to connect while doing this one thing, which is what I think what every creative is trying to do, right? Is just trying to like showcase like their part of their little corner of the world and
trying to make an impact to a certain degree too.
Yeah. And sometimes it is selfish though.
Yeah.
And that's another conversation of being like, at some point, is this like, am I a narcissist? You know, and it's just like, you know, and like with you, at least yours is like our first solo one. I was like, oh, like this is just me, you know, just like, why would anyone want to listen to just dumbass me just like rambling about like fucking pyramids and shit, you know?
I think I've seen a lot of like YouTube creators who also have podcasts and stuff. They do their solo podcast by doing like almost like a Q&A. I think that's a cool format. There's like different formats that you can or do as a solo, like if you do a solo episode. But I think my favorite, if I were to do it, it would be like a question and answer Q&A type of thing.
Right. So at some point, like we have
that way at least someone's asking me questions, you know,
for sure,
stuff to answer.
Like with us, we're thinking about doing like a Patreon or like a membership on YouTube now, right? You can have like your own membership channel on YouTube, and we have 2 interviews that like we can't really like. I mean, I'm down to like put them up, but like through a paywall, you know, type shit. Like that's my OnlyFans.
Yeah, but behind a paywall, you can pretty much do anything.
Right. And like at that point, I'm like, whatever.
Yeah.
As long as you paid me $5. You know, like you're like, whatever.
If you're offended, it's your fault. You paid me.
You paid me. I'm like, dude, like you already know what chicanery shit you're doing here. But yeah, like I have like 2 interviews, one with like my ex. That like got a little heated, where I'm like, okay, this part of the interview we're gonna take out, but like I'm still gonna use it,
or use the full length thing behind a paywall and then just edit that, like cut it off earlier or something, where it's like, okay, if you want to watch the rest of this.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's essentially
that
what
way
we did.
It'll convert.
That's essentially what we did. We still released the first half of that interview.
Okay.
Which was like, you know, super friendly and everything, but it's just like, you know, if you want to bring up shit, let's fucking bring up shit. But I'm not gonna release it to the world because I don't think you actually want that. You know, like I think you just wanted to do this because it was like your moment, you know, which is cool. But that was the difference between like with my podcast, anyways, is like I'm bringing like civilians,
right?
You know, like people who aren't artists, people who aren't in the industry. This isn't like their profession. They're just here to fucking create a moment because they want to post it, right? Which is cool, and that's what's gonna happen. But like that was a learning curve where I was like, oh shit, okay, like I don't have control of a conversation. I have control over an interview, but 20 minutes in, it's not really an interview anymore. You know, it's always just like, okay, it's like, what do you think about
the
that?
flow of the conversation? I do a little bit more in-depth prep work. I do like just bullet notes. I do about 3 full pages of typed bullet notes, just like to break up the topics that I do want to talk about, because again, it is a little bit more targeted. I really like this free flow, talk about whatever you want, but with mine, I do prep work and I do write things out, but I do mine on the computer, so I can just have like my word up and the camera on the same screen. So.
I did that until like maybe like episode like 6.
Okay.
But I went from my laptop to like then my phone just have like real small notes.
Even like, again, Impulsive, Logan and Mike, who are the hosts, they're on their phones looking at notes the entire time.
Right.
Yeah.
And like, I think that's what helps with you having a host or even just having a monitor right there, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
like, you can even throw it up on here if you wanted to.
Yeah, if we really wanted to.
Yeah.
But like also like I almost like the reason why I don't like put notes up there is because I don't want you to know what I'm going to
right.
because I want your actual like reaction, not being like
not thinking about the question before you answer
exactly.
it. Yeah.
And like that to me is the fun part. I mean, being like, oh, okay, well, like asking you about your tour dates and you've never like even wondered about your tour dates, and it's like, oh, okay, that's the reaction I wanted, because not every artist thinks about it because they don't have to. And that's cool, like that's not your job.
Whatever on the schedule I do, that's kind of a lot of their mindset,
right?
And not everyone, but
not everyone, but like those who make it. And like that's the thing that I want like our viewers to kind of see is just like who like the reality of everything, where it's like it's an interview, but it's also like it's a free flowing conversation where like I could be interviewing them too, but we're talking about how we grew up, and like how like the differences between how we're all like Hispanic, we all grew up in different ways, and somehow we still ended up in the same position, or trying to do the same thing. Obviously, they're way bigger than me, but like that's the whole point of the conversation, because I feel like at least at this point, I connect more with like the people who are listening, because I'm still playing these shows that they're on. And those are the people who are like, oh dude, that last interview was actually really good, and I was like, oh dude, that to me is just like them telling me like that transition you just did was fucking sick, and I get the same feeling, but with you, like how often do you get feedback like on the fly like type shit?
I say within like a couple of days I would.
But like with you, do you get it like when you're out and about, or do you get it mostly online?
I get both.
But
I get people commenting and sharing, or like throwing, tagging us in their Instagram stories or whatever. I get that, but then I also get when I see people out, when I go to shows or whatever, or I'm at a festival and I'm networking, like people come up to me and they're like, dude, you do the podcast, or like same thing, like it happens kind of both, I think.
Right. I mean, I don't really experience it online as much because I feel like the people who I see are the people who would comment anyways. But yeah, like you've been doing it for 3 years. You're also part of a different like scene. Within the community. And just like seeing, like I brought up to this producer Justo. Yep. So like, and I brought you up.
He's actually released a mix with us, I think. Like,
oh, really?
A couple years ago, yeah.
Oh, okay, bet. Because he was like, oh yeah, I know him, and I was like, all right, bet, like certified. Like I just need to ask one person in the scene, just to like verify
me.
Not even verify,
blue check mark me.
But yeah, but like for real, just be like, oh, okay, like this is like wow, I'll have anyone, but also like this is a dope. Like I'm like, oh, I need to like actually like kind of somewhat prep a little bit and all this shit.
Well, thank you for having me, man.
No, yeah, this was awesome.
Awesome.
This has been so sick. But I honestly, I wish we can go for longer. But yeah, like I
always do around 2.
Dude, that's what I'm hoping for. Yeah, for sure. And definitely like I'm excited to see your growth and how you do it. And now that we're familiar, like I'm so happy to be able to learn even from a distance.
Yeah, for
as
sure.
to like what you're doing.
Dude, if you ever have any questions or see something I'm doing, you have any questions, hit me up, please.
Yeah. I definitely have questions. I'm gonna need like names of apps or whatever that you're using. But yeah, no, this has been a real learning podcast for myself.
I'm glad.
And hopefully for other people. I know it's kind of more content, and I know people aren't really thinking about it.
I feel like a lot of people are interested in doing it. They just really don't know where to start.
Yeah, it's
kind of a wave. Like it's kind of what people do nowadays. So it's like you're not doing it, and you kind of have any sort of entrepreneurial or like creative desire, like that's kind of the thing to do nowadays.
Right.
So,
Yeah. The one thing I've noticed about, like, at least with myself, is I'm the mascot and the name. So I just need to like play the part, and not necessarily play the part as in like I need to act up or anything, but believe in myself that I am this mascot. I am like I am the thing, you know, and I need to like not be afraid to like put myself out there as much as I have.
Well, I think you do a great job. So
I appreciate it, and I think you're doing a fucking amazing job. I'm really excited to see everything that you got going on. But do you want to give out your Instagram, your socials, and everything?
Honestly, just find everything. www.undergroundsociety.com or undergroundsocietypodcast.com. I'm sorry. You can find all my socials and everything on there. All of our episodes are posted on there. That's like our hub. So www.undergroundsocietypodcast.com.
Hell yeah. But yeah, as far as me, you guys can find me at George.Daniel __, and you guys can find all the podcast stuff at any platform at George.Daniel pod. But yeah, fucking thank you guys.
Hey, if you made it this far, drop us a freaking like, subscribe. If you're on Spotify, whatever it is, drop us a rating.
We're on Spotify. Yeah. I have all the
give us a rating, give us, subscription, all that kind of stuff. These guys deserve it. They do a great job. So.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate that a ton. Yeah. And I need to do better at like telling people what to do, but also like, but yeah, no, thank you guys. I love you guys. Like, comment, subscribe, and peace.
Sweet.